Hello, it's time for part 11 of the Land of Roar. I hope it's been a lovely day where you are. It's been very, very sunny here, and I hope you're all still staying nice and safe. Let's have a look and see what's going to happen now that Rose has joined Win and Arthur at the right time as well in the Land of Roar. That's my last page. Chapter 23. We know something is wrong the moment we step inside. Our feet crunch over sand, thick dust covers every surface, and the door at the back of the hut is swinging open. As we walk further in, a yellow crab scuttles out from under a cupboard, crosses to a hole cut in the wooden floor, and drops over the side with a plop. I realise that it's fallen straight into the lagoon. I peer into the hole. The water is clear and deep and full of tangled weed that's dotted with fluorescent snails and tiny starfish. I have a flashback to Mitch heaving herself out of this hole, her tail hitting the planks with a wet thump, then looking at me and saying, "Oh, it's you." Only there is no Mitch here now. "Mitch!" calls Rose. "Where are you?" There's no response. All we can hear is the sound of water lapping beneath our feet. "I don't think she's here," I say. Rose sticks her head into Mitch's store cupboard, then goes into her bedroom. While Win checks the deck outside, I go to investigate the fireplace. A cauldron is sitting over a long dead fire, and a chopping board lies next to it covered with shriveled up herbs and flowers. A knife is pressed into a mouldy toadstool. It's like Mitch has walked out in the middle of making dinner. Or a spell. Rose runs her fingers through the dust on the bottles that line the windowsill. Bright colours start to shine through, jade, crimson, and even a pale milky liquid that's threaded with swirling silver. "Where is she?" she says. Win comes back in. "I think she's gone." "What?" "Gone out," says Rose. "Gone hunting for ingredients." "No, just gone." He shrugs. "Like the unicorns and half of the merfolk. I reckon she's vanished." Rose puts down the bottle she's holding. "What do you mean?" "It's like I told Arthur," says Win. "Things have been disappearing. It happened around the same time the ground wobbles started and the sinkholes opened up." "Maybe they went to the tangled forest," says Rose. "It's huge. Loads of things could go in there and never be seen again." Win shakes his head. "Once I thought I saw it happen right in front of my eyes. I was down on the beach and a mermaid was jumping over a wave. I watched her fly up in the air and then she just vanished." Rose turns and goes over to the mantelpiece. It's covered in white shells, a horse made out of driftwood, a bracelet and a dried up flower. Rose stares at the shells, and I see that they aren't randomly scattered like I thought. In fact, they spell out Rose. Rose stares and stares, then wipes her hand through the shells, sending them tinkling to the floor. "Mermaids move fast," she says. "You know that. That one you saw, she can't have vanished. You weren't looking properly." Rose's voice is raised. Just like me, she gets angry when she's upset. She glares at both of us. "Maybe," says Win, "but I was just over at the lagoon and I can only see one mermaid in there. It used to be full of them. Where have they gone?" Rose turns and bangs out of the hut, and Win and I watch her go. She walks to the end of the deck and stands, arms folded, staring across the lagoon. Win picks up Mitch's spell book and flicks through it. Then he says, "I think now Mitch has gone, I might miss her too." "I know what you mean." I look around the abandoned room. I've spent more time in Win's cave than Mitch's hut, but now I'm here I can remember how this place used to be full of smoke and the smell of herbs and spices and the sound of Mitch's laughter. The cauldron would be bubbling and Mitch would be sitting with her tail dangling in the hole, her blue hair coiled around her. If Win was made up of things I loved, then Mitch was made up of things Rose loved: magic, the sea, and laughing at me and Win. "I'd better check if Rose is all right," I say, and walk out of the hut. Rose is standing by a hammock tied to the branches of a willow tree. She pushes the hammock with one finger. "I'm not bothered," she says before I've said a word. "Mitch was cool, but she wasn't real. Not like my friends back home." The water in the lagoon bubbles and ripples for a moment before becoming still again. "Perhaps you're right," I say. "Maybe she's in the tangled forest." Rose shakes her head. "No, she loved it here." Looking around, I can see why. It's silent and beautiful. Mitch used to get annoyed with a lot of things, especially me and Win, but there's nothing to annoy her here. Rose turns away from me and I notice that her shoulders are shaking. I wonder if she's crying. Only Rose never cries. Once a log tied to a rope swing smacked her in the face and broke her nose, and she still didn't cry. I did. There was so much blood. I'm just considering putting my hand on Rosie's shoulder, although I'm almost certain it will drive her mad, when I hear heavy breathing behind me. I turn and see Prosecco walking towards us. He's soaking wet. His glittering mane hangs in limp strands around his shoulders, and water drips from his body. He must have swum between the islands of the archipelago to get to Rose. He nudges past me and dips his heavy head until it's resting against Rosie's cheek. She turns and, without saying a word, throws her arms around his neck and buries her face in his sopping mane. Oh. Then they just stand there, Rosie's arms squeezing tight, Prosecco's eyes closed, and the willow branches brushing the water. Rose looks up at me. We're going back to the crow's nest, she says. We're going to get Grandad and take him home. You really think we can do it? Of course we can. Then she grips Prosecco's mane and pulls herself onto his back. I'm going to come up with a plan. Prosecco jumps past me, nearly knocking me into the lagoon, then gallops off across the island with Rose clinging to his back. His thundering hoos make the dragons rise up in the sky, and I watch as they circle the island once, twice, then soar off over the sea. Chapter 24. When Rose gets back, Wyn and I have mended the door and started to make dinner. We found roots, leaves and mushrooms in Mitch's garden, and together we chopped them up and put them in the cauldron. Rose inspects the thick, murky soup. Smells surprisingly okay, she says. Then she walks around the room, pulling open drawers and rummaging through cupboards. Eventually she rips some pages from the back of the spellbook, finds a pen and starts writing. She draws diagrams, creates lists and covers the page with doodles and arrows. Presumably this is her plan to get Grandad out of the crow's nest. I only speak to her when I take the map out of my pocket and hand it over. This might help, I say. Thank you, she mutters. Then I leave her to it and help Wyn sort Mitch's potions into 2 piles. Deadly poisonous and not deadly poisonous. Dinner is almost ready when Rose tells us she needs our help. That thing you were on, that line of rock. The magic road, says Wyn. I think you mean the obstacle course of death, I say. Rose shakes her head with frustration and passes us the map. Whatever. I want you to add it on here. From Pickle's back I could see that it was long, but it was broken in some places and the rocks looked like they were all different shapes and sizes. I want to know exactly where everything is, especially the big boulders. So Wyn and I get to work, leaving Rose to season the soup with generous dashes of potions from the not deadly poisonous pile. I have to trust Wyn to do the part of the magic road he travelled along without me, and there's a bit at the end that is a mystery to both of us, but by the time Rose is dishing up the soup, we're pretty pleased with what we've done. We eat our strange soup sitting at the end of the jetty, our feet dangling into the lagoon. I take a sip. It might be purple and fizzing, but it tastes delicious. Maybe that's because we're so hungry. As we eat, we watch the setting sun turn the water orange, then yellow, and finally a deep dark blue. It's beautiful, but it's hard to enjoy it knowing that Grandad is trapped deep in the dungeons of the crow's nest. Rose must be having similar thoughts because suddenly she bangs down her bowl. She's wearing the bracelet that was on the mantelpiece, and the shells and the sea glass catch the last of the evening light. Right, she says. Let's talk about the plan. She clears her throat and pulls out her notes and map. The 3 of us can't get into the crow's nest from the magic road because, well, you saw what happened, so we need another way in. The crow's nest is in the middle of the wildest ocean in Raw, I say. There's no other way in. Yes, there is, interrupts Rose. Remember the time Croaky fished Mitch out of the sea in a net and took her to the crow's nest in the Raven? Yes, cries Wyn. She escaped by jumping from a tower. I nod, the story coming back to me. In fact, I think we were sitting right here when Mitch told us about it. So, there's a tunnel that leads right inside the crow's nest from the sea, says Rose, and we're going to fly into it on the dragons. We, I say. Wyn and I don't fly dragons, Rose, or even sit on them. That's your job, remember. We just admire them from a distance. Well, you're going to have to learn how to fly them because the 3 of us, plus Grandad, will be too many to sit on one dragon. I'll fly Pickle and you 2 will fly Vlad. Bad Dragon is much bigger. If she was around, we could use her. No, we couldn't, says Wyn. Bad Dragon is vicious. But she was never really bad, protests Rose. The only reason she was called Bad Dragon was because she was so cheeky and was always having to say stuff like, spit out that furry, Bad Dragon. Now she lives up to her name, says Wyn. She's bad to the core, or was before she disappeared. Rose absorbs this information, then nods. So we forget about Bad Dragon and fly Vlad and Pickle into the cave. And while Croaky and his scarecrows are being distracted, we climb up into the castle, grab Grandad and fly out of there. Hang on. Who's distracting Croaky, I say, because that is one job I would not like to have. Rosie's eyes light up. The Lost Girls. The Lost Girls? Win sucks in his breath. Are you serious? They're savage. The Lost Girls are shadowy in my memory, but perhaps that's because they like to hide. They were a gang of ferocious little girls who had a camp of tree houses deep in the tangled forest. They were unpredictable, but there were a lot of them. I think back to how quickly Win and I were overwhelmed by the Scarecrow army. Rosie's right, I say. We need the Lost Girls, but how will we get them to the crow's nest? We can't fit them all on the dragons. Rose points at the bit Win and I added to the map. They're going to get there on the magic road. There are loads of them, so they'll be able to fight the Scarecrows and keep them away from us. She looks from Win to me. So, it's decided. Tomorrow we go to the Tangled Forest, find the Lost Girls and persuade them to help us. Then, you two can learn how to fly a dragon. I nod, trying to ignore the various gaping holes in Rose's plan, like the persuade them to help us bit and the you two can learn how to fly a dragon bit. What could go wrong? Cries Win, and in his excitement he jumps to his feet and throws himself into the lagoon with a cry of Ninja Bomb! He splutters to the surface. Water's perfect, come in! Rose is adamant that she's not getting wet, so while she swings in Mitch's hammock, I jump in too. Only I take my jeans off first. And together we swim to the centre of the lagoon. He's right, the water is perfect. We float on our backs and we watch as the last rays of the sun disappear and the stars come out. Tomorrow I have to venture into a forest that's hiding a gang of violent girls and learn how to ride a dragon. But right now my skin is changing from red to blue to purple as the stars shine down on me and a mermaid is swimming around us, occasionally knocking my feet with her tail. I'm glad you came back, Arthur, says Win, breaking the silence. Me too, I reply.